Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? How's everyone doing? Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone? Come on in. We got a lot to talk about. It's a lot going on. Let me see. Here, YouTube. So today, I wanted to discuss some things that's going on. I came across on the internet concerning bullying. Um, it's a lot going on. I've come across a couple stories on the internet concerning bullying. Um, and if someone doesn't know what bullying is, to be a bully, the definition is to seek to harm, intimidate, coerce someone perceived as being vulnerable. And um, then concerning the internet, we have what's considered cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is the use of digital technologies to repeatedly harass, intimidate, or harm someone, often leaving a permanent online record. And that right there is considered evidence. Okay? If you go around here bullying someone while you're online, and let me see if I can get this glare out. It's not taking it out. I'm trying to get this glare out of my. I guess I have to take my glasses off. If you're going around bullying someone while you're online and you're using um, digital technology, it leaves a fingerprint. It leaves a trace to where someone can track you. All right. I was looking at a TikTok video where um, this mother had a 3 year old son. Her 3 year old son was in a daycare. And you know, a lot of these daycares now, they have cameras set up where the parents can check in on their child. And she's at work. She checks in on her son, and she literally sees the teaching assistant literally bullying her child in front of the other um, children in the daycare and coercing the children in the daycare to bully her son. Okay. And I don't know what led, it didn't show what led to that situation, but I don't care what led to the situation. Why would you coerce the other children to bully a child? That's teaching them, um, that's teaching them to bully at an early age. They're 3. They were toddlers. Um, and you're an adult doing this to a child. So, of course, the mother confronted the director of the center concerning this woman bullying, or, what she perceived to be bullying her child. And she had documentation because there was a tape. The woman had it on videotape and she showed the director. And she confronted the assistant, the teaching assistant, in the office with the director. And this teaching assistant, she stood there and she laughed. She smiled. She, had this smirky grin on her face. She didn't deny it. And she probably could not deny it because the woman had it on tape. I'm trying to see what that was all about. So, yeah, that that is quite disturbing. Like I said, the particular daycare that her child went to, they had that type of service, which is great for the parents because you can check in on your children to see how they're being treated throughout the day. Not a lot of people don't have that service, or are not. That service is not readily available to them. So it just, it brings to mind, I had children in daycare as they were coming up. And, you wonder what really goes on in these daycares sometimes. Um, I know my youngest son, he was in a daycare, and you know, the every time I think about it, it just sends chills up my spine. So he was in a daycare. It was a privately owned daycare, and this woman that I thought was, she only had the one classroom, and she had the classroom set up. It was a business in her basement. You could enter through, the basement of her home and drop your child off. And it was a small setup. Just like I said, just the one classroom. I know it was no more than um, maybe 10 to 15 children. And she had an assistant. She always had an assistant there. Well, a lot of the assistants that uh, worked for her were students who were in college getting their teaching degrees. A lot of them became, they went there for their clinicals. So I said, okay, sounds like a pretty good setup. Um, the price at the time is not the prices that these people now are now paying, but I was able to afford it. So, I paid my money. So the when he joined her class, he was two because your child had to be potty trained. Okay. So he wanted to go to school because his brothers went to school. So I went on and got him into this daycare. I guess he was 2.5 because he had been going. My mother always watched my kids. Okay, so I never really had to worry about daycare. Thank God for my mom. She was always there for me. So I put him in this daycare situation. One of the young ladies that was her assistant was someone who actually grew up with me. Okay, she was a little younger than I was. She went to school with my sisters, my younger sisters. And she also attended the church that I belonged to. And I'll never forget, she came to me one day after church and she said, I think you need to remove your son from that daycare. So I looked at her and I said, why? And, she didn't really want to come out and say it in so many words, but she said, um, the owner has a problem. And I said, really? And I said, well, what type of problem? Unfortunately, the owner at that time, she was actually doing drugs. Yeah. And that was during let me see, if he was 2.5, that was during the 80s. That was during the 80s. I would say mid to late 80s that he was in her class, this woman's daycare. And the thing is that this was the time period when crack cocaine had hit the streets in the different neighborhoods. Um, I I hate to say I might have been naive during that time period because we lived in the same neighborhood as this woman, and I never saw signs of it. I never really, I guess I just didn't pay attention to it because, when you're working, you're about, I know I was, you know, making sure my kids get to school, making sure my husband, he got off to work, yada, yada, yada. And like I said, during the mid or late 80s to 90s, cocaine just infiltrated a lot of the middle, and we lived in a middle class neighborhood. Most of my neighbors were correctional officers, policemen, firemen. Okay, I worked in healthcare at the time. A lot of people, their wives were in healthcare. So it wasn't like, um, a lot of people say, oh, it's only happening in the poor neighborhood. No, we were working class people. We were middle class, low middle class, but considered middle class families. And they were families. These were households with mothers and fathers in the household. And when I say I watched the crack epidemic come through and wipe out families, wipe out households, it was like it came through with a vengeance. And we didn't have, you see these stereotypical movies and stuff where they showed the drug dealers on the corners or taking over the neighborhoods. We didn't see none of that. I don't know if it's because we had police officers in our neighborhoods, okay? But we didn't see any of that. That was not the neighborhood, okay? It was all undercover, basically, okay? These were functional drug addicts, and that's what I call them, functional drug addicts. I don't know if that's considered a term. Let me Google it and see. Because basically, these same people, they were going to work every day. Let me see. That is a term. A functional, and I'm sorry, I know I'm not supposed to use that D word. A functional drug addict is someone who maintains normal responsibilities and appearances while secretly struggling with substance abuse. And it was prevalent. And my first encountering with that, and I won't say my first, but when it was up front dealing with my children, was that situation. Was that situation. So considering that he was in her daycare, she was dealing with that problem. What did my son, what did he experience while he was under her care? I don't know. I don't know, and I'll never know because there were no cameras there. There was nothing to record what was going on, while he was in her care. And he was in her care, I would say, for at least 2 years before I realized what was going on. Or should I say that I was notified of what was going on. And if I ever, I have asked him, was there anything that was going on that I should have been aware of? But he always says no. And then I wonder, would a man tell you if something went wrong? You know, because of the way our society is set up today. So, yeah, that was so when I saw this young lady, this bullying, because that's what the mother classified it as, this bullying going on with her 3-year old. I thought back to when my children were in daycare situations. What what can happen to your child when they're in a daycare, and what can happen to anybody's child. You know, that bullying, it seems to be, I guess, more prevalent than we really imagine. I know I was bullied as a child, and I would always, I wasn't bullied quite a bit, but I was. But whenever I was bullied, I always talked my way out of a situation. I remember this girl and this her brother used to meet me because I lived in the city. So the stores were literally on the next block over from where we lived. And my mother would give me money to go to the store to purchase whatever. She and her brother would be standing at the corner, and if they saw me, she would come over to bully me to try to, rough me up and take my money. So one day she stopped me, and I always wore glasses. I've been wearing glasses since I was 9 years old. But a lot of times I didn't wear my glasses like now because I can see it's just not, you know, the clarity. So I'm going around the corner to the store with this money in my hand, and she and her brother was trying to rough me up to take my money. And she said, well, um, give me your money, like that. So she had a little brother with her to back her up. And I played crazy, act like I didn't know who she was. Her name, I believe, was Tina. So Tina's gonna rough me up, tell me to give me. She wanted me to give her my money. I told her no, I'm not giving her my money. And she said, so she looks at me, and I said, and plus, who are you? I played crazy, act like I didn't know who she was. And she says, oh, now you don't know who I am? And I said, no, who are you? And she said, you don't remember me from last week? And I said to her, I said, oh, you must have been talking about my twin sister. So she looked at me. I said, yeah, my twin sister, she wears glasses. She had on glasses, right? Talk about my twin sister. Yeah, I talked my way out of that. And she looked at me, turned her head to the side like, you don't have a twin sister. I said, yes, I do. Yeah, and she wears glasses. So that's how I got out of that. But yeah, I'm quite sure bullying has been around for a long time. My oldest son, when he was 10, I believe, he was in fifth grade, and he was he got accepted to a very academic plus school, but it was in center city of the town we live in. And he had to take public transportation to go to school. And I wanted him to attend the school. The days that I could take him to school, I would drop him off, but there were some days that he had to catch the train. And we would give him lunch money, you know, for the days he wanted to buy lunch at school or whatever. And he didn't tell me this until he attended the school up until the ninth grade. So he was there for 4 years. He told me he used to get shook down on the train because when he was 10, I hate to say, my son was a husky kid. He was a kid, always had the hardest time buying clothes for him because he was husky, or as they used to say, the fat kid. He was plump. He wasn't obesely fat, but he was extra. He was a little overweight, and but the older boys would be on the train, I guess, between the different high schools and junior high schools that would catch the train with him. And they used to shake him down for his lunch money. And I was like, wow. I said, you never got hurt or anything? He said, no. You know, he would always have an extra stash somewhere else, but they would shake him down and he would give them, I guess, whatever, he wanted them to have. But yeah, he used to get shook down on the trains. I was like, wow. Like I said, you never know what your child goes through. They don't tell you everything. I know I hate to say it. I know I didn't tell my parents everything that went on um, in my life as a child. I mean, unless it was something serious. But you never know what your children are going through. And a lot of times, some kids don't even tell you what is going on, such as this bullying situation. Um, because a lot of children go get through bullying. Hey D, how you doing, sis? I'm glad you're in the chat today. Um, Such as this bullying situation, you never know what your child is going through. They don't tell you all the time. Um, like I said, I know I didn't tell my parents everything that happened to me. I guess if it was something really, really serious, I probably would. But there are some children that were not only bullied, they were afraid to even talk about it. Um, you never know what a child goes through. And, you know, some of the kids that do get bullied and don't talk about it, sometimes it manifests into something more serious, um, such as them not only hurting themselves or themselves being hurt, they might hurt some of the other kids around them. They might even take it out on adults that are around them. But a lot of times, bullying happens, you know, let's say they're being bullied at school. Well, they might come home and bully their younger siblings or a younger friend in the neighborhood or something. And, and then the parents wonder, well, why is my child acting out like this? You never know what's going on the back end to make your child act like that. Sometimes I think a lot of situations where kids um, do a lot of, they show these anger issues and stuff. A lot of times, and most of the time, it's something like really, really bothering them. and they're reacting that way. That's why a lot of times, if you see your child doing something really outrageous, sometimes you might have to take them to a therapist or a child psychologist to see or to find out, is there something underlying that's causing them to display a difference in how they react to different things. Um, if a child's been, a pretty good child all along, and you see them doing something really outrageous, like striking at another child or striking at an adult, and you never had any problems with that child before, someone needs to sit down and talk to that child. And that child might not talk to the adults in your household. You might have to have someone else talk to the child to pull that information out of the child. They might not feel that they can talk to their parents, or they might not feel that they could talk to even their teachers at the school. Um, you might have to invest or try to seek some type of counseling from another source away from um, like a school, or I don't know if you could reach out to a church possibly. Um, but even maybe a pediatrician can um, suggest a child psychologist for your child to talk to. Because troubled children make troubled adults. Okay? And if we don't get a handle on some of the things going on in the society, it's just going to get worse as society goes on. It's just going to get worse. Another thing I came across in the news is um, this terrible airport crash that happened with this Air Canada um, aviation flight. Okay? It crashed at LaGuardia Airport. And, of course, the FAA is going to, investigate it. But the thing is, I believe they were still on the runway, and they ran into, it was a collision with a fire truck that was responding to a different incident. They said 41 people were taken to the hospital. 32 were released, but others remain hospitalized with serious injuries. And the pilot and the co-pilot are both unalived. And the sad part is they said that the air traffic controller could be heard on a radio transmission giving clearance to the vehicle to cross part of the tarmac, and then they were trying to stop the vehicle from crossing the tarmac. Like he told the the controller told the truck to, that they could cross, but I guess he didn't notice that that the plane was on the runway. And the sad part is that's the job of the air traffic controller, to say when to go, to tell these planes when to go, when not to go. That's the part. That's the part I don't understand. What is the point of air traffic controllers if they're not doing their job correctly? You know? Let's see, we have this on CNN. Here's a speaker.
Truck on the runway. Now, this happened just before midnight. 2 pilots were killed. Dozens of other people are injured. This video from the scene showing the wrecked plane, nose tilted up to the sky. The crash truck is seen nearby, and here is the moment air traffic controllers knew something went wrong.
Frontier 4195 to stop there, please. Stop, stop. Stop, truck 1, stop. Stop, truck 1, stop. You got 606 to see you collide with vehicle there, just hold position, I know you can't move. Vehicles are responding to you now.
Okay, joining us now with the very latest is CNN correspondent Gloria Pasmino. And Gloria, what are you hearing right now at LaGuardia?
Yeah, Audie, it's just devastating listening to that audio, hearing the radio operator telling the vehicle to stop. We now know that the vehicle collided with the airplane. There were 72 passengers aboard that aircraft, 4 crew members, and sadly, the pilot and the co-pilot were killed as a result of that collision. Now, dozens of passengers were also injured. 41 passengers and crew were transported to the hospital shortly after that collision. 31 of them have been released, and the 2 people who were inside the fire truck, which collided with the airplane, we are told are in stable condition. Now, here's what happened, and as you look at the images of the airplane, you can see the front of the airplane is completely destroyed. The collision happened around 11:40 last night. This is a Jazz Aviation flight that was operating on behalf of Air Canada. The aircraft, we are told, struck a Port Authority aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicle, which was actually responding to a different aircraft on the runway. This was flight 8646. It was coming in from Montreal late last night. It left Montreal around 10:30 p.m. local time and landed here at 11:40. It collided with the firefighting vehicle shortly after the landing. In fact, we heard from officials here at the Port Authority, which manages the airport. They described the moment, saying the collision happened during the landing. Now, this was a regional jet aircraft. It was traveling south, going very fast, about 130 miles just before it hit that fire truck. Now, the passengers who did not have to be transported to the hospital were actually seen leaving the airport just a short time ago. I was able to catch up with one of them. He described the moment to me, telling me that it was a hard landing and that they had no indication that there was a problem on the runway. Listen.
We went down for a regular landing. We came in pretty hard. We immediately hit something, and it was just chaos from there. About 5 seconds later, we had come to a stop, but in that short period, I mean, everybody was hunkered down and everybody was screaming. Pretty quickly, we didn't have any directions because the pilot's cabin had been kind of destroyed. So somebody said, let's get the emergency exit and get the door in. Let's all jump out, and that's exactly what we did.
Audie, the passengers who did not have to be transported to the hospital were set up in an airline lounge. They were reunited with their family members, and as I said, many of them were leaving the airport just a short while ago. The FAA issued a ground stop here at LaGuardia Airport shortly after the incident. That ground stop has been lifted now, but the airport is closed. Officials telling us just in the last hour they expect LaGuardia Airport to remain closed at least until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The National Transportation Service Board, the NTSB, is on the ground launching their investigation. And I just have to say, the fact that the airport has to remain closed at least until the late afternoon, 2 o'clock today, is certain to cause a lot of delays, a lot of transportation issues here for passengers, which of course comes as we are seeing all these other problems, delays, and long lines as a result of the partial government shutdown. So it's going to be a busy and likely, a troublesome morning for people who are going to be traveling. Audie?
Okay, that's Gloria.
Yeah, so seems that my gimbal has died. Okay. So yeah, so that's the latest with that flight, which is sad because it sounds like this was a controller error. That's how it's appearing. I'm quite sure after the investigation, they're going to determine where the error came in. And, which is sad. I mean, something so simple as they told the truck to go, the fire truck, like they said they were going to another incident at the airport, and you didn't see that big old jetliner going across the tarmac. It's like, make it make sense. It wasn't like it was a private plane, a small plane. That was a jet, aviation, a jetliner. So now you have all the casualties, and unfortunately, a couple deaths, due to the call of the improper call from the tower. Yeah, that's crazy. So, um, yeah. So once NTBS, once they investigate, I'm quite sure they'll come up with some type of call for that. It's gotten to the point where I know I'm real cautious about flying now. And this has been going on. I really want to say with the last administration, the guy that's over, aviation now. They made a lot of budget cuts. I'm looking at some of the comments. They said, who knew that understaffing and underfunding would lead to this happening? Which is true. And that's what it is, a bunch of undercuts and underfunding. As something's, and that's been going on in all areas of this administration. Just like now, TSA has been, from what I understand, they've been on government shutdown, TSA. So, of course, since they were under government shutdown, because for whatever reason, they haven't determined the funding for that department. So they're on government shutdown, which a lot of the staffers refuse to work and not get paid. And you can't blame them. A lot of people like to get paid when they go to work. So they haven't been coming to work. So because they haven't been coming to work, they're understaffed. And TSA is understaffed. So therefore, the lines at the airports have been horrendous. They had to shut down some of the lines. Like if there's 5 lines there, I think a lot of the airports are down maybe 3, maybe 2. So today they decided they have deployed the ICE agents to work in the TSA areas of the airport. And a lot of the airports are going through kind of a turmoil with that, because of the ICE agents stepping in. Now, I don't know if they know exactly what to do, as far as stepping in, to help TSA. But yeah, they're deploying the ICE agents now at the airports. Um, and with this thing at LaGuardia, I'm quite sure it's really a big situation there, because LaGuardia um, is a big hub
This
for
cleaner is insane.
a lot of the international. LaGuardia is a big hub for a lot of international flights, in and out of the United States. So I'm quite sure we're going to hear more stories concerning the ICE agents, going into the airports, to assist TSA. We're going to hear a lot more about that probably. But this flight that crashed, unfortunately, LaGuardia is going to be shut down, they said, until 2 o'clock. So prayerfully, they'll be able to open up and resume business as usual. But think about all the flights that have to be detoured due to that, either detoured or not taking off at all, you know? And that's a big airport. It's a huge airport. Think about the people going in and out of that airport every day. It's a lot. That's a really large airport in New York. So, but anyway, I I I went live today indoors because it is raining here. So I didn't want to go walking while it's raining. I was trying to wait for the rain to stop so that I could go out and do my healthy walking. But what's new in the area? I was hoping to see someone come through. I was glad to see my sister come through. I don't know if anyone else has caught my live, but if you do come across it, please leave a comment, type replay, and let me know about the content that I have spoken about. Um, please give me a like and please subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. I thank you all who have subscribed. My subscriber count, I believe, is a little over 250 or close to 250. And I really, really appreciate all those who have subscribed. And like I said, please leave a like. It helps me to get out into the algorithm. And I really appreciate all who have commented also on my live streams. It's really appreciated, and some of the comments have been quite engaging, and I really appreciate everything. All right, well, I'm going to end my live, and I would like to thank everyone who came through, and hopefully I'll get to speak with you at another time. Have a great day and start to your new week. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.